What about that sword? You've all been asking that question, and it's a good question. The greatest weapon ever wielded, Gorshalak. So powerful it could cleave planets in two. Only one was mighty enough to wield it, and that is the noble defender of creation itself, Sargeras. Together with Gorshalak, Sargeras waged war throughout the young cosmos, endlessly destroying demons. And from that point, we know how the story goes. Sargeras meets the Dreadlords, he learns about the horrors of the Void, he falls to madness, he does the whole Burning Legion thing, and this is where we lose track of Gorshalak, because it is not the blade that's currently embedded in Azeroth. That's actually a bit of a mystery. The old non-canon RPG claimed that the blade was actually sentient and it split in two, sensing Sargeras' evil. One shard was forged into Teshalak, which of course is Agrimar's blade, and the other half, Gorabal, that's Sargeras' blade. But that's the non-canon RPG. Warcraft Chronicle actually has a bit of a different story. So the question then is, with all of this in mind, just what the hell is sticking out of Silithus? Is it Gorabal? And more importantly, what's next for the Sword of Sargeras? What's it going to do with our world? And will we be able to free it with Boxu, where you can catch their Sakura Season box 10% off, up to $47 using my code, which is down below. And there is no wonder that this is their most anticipated box. I mean, come on, when you think of Japan, the cherry blossom bloom is like top of mind, and there is some real unique tasty stuff, so I'll show you a few things. So for our hero item, I think it's gotta be the Kanazawa Sakura Jelly. Man, it's so beautiful, there's like little cherry blossoms inside it, so that's awesome. We've got these marshmallows are just, oh my god, they're so nice. There's a bunch of really delicious shortbreads, and then, I don't know what it is about the gummies they have, but these plum gummies are off the goddamn charts. Then, cherry blossom pastry, and a whole bunch more, really. And that's the fun of getting these. It's all super fun and novel. And it's also, I think importantly, the types of stuff that you're just not going to get in the West. Not even in your local Asian supermarket, right? And that does make sense because these are all shipped from Japan. Like, this is the real stuff. So you can hit up my link down below. You can join me in having a big old box of tasty, interesting, unique treats. And if you do so by the 14th of April, you'll get the Sakura Season box as well. So enjoy, link down below, and let's go. Fear not the time when great Sargeras' shadow eclipses the sun. That is the moment of our ascension. Death will follow, but it is only a doorway. Man, those Doomsayer pamphlet things, they really had a lot to say, didn't they? Death did, of course, follow. But what was it a doorway to? Whether through suggestion or manipulation or something more involved, Sargeras was made a pawn by the jailer. Throughout Shadowlands, we then looked back at his blade in Silithus and, I wondered, how's this going to fit in? You probably wondered the same. How is it going to fit into his plan? And the potential was kind of crazy. I mean, it could have been pure mad. Morn blades steal souls, like Kingsmorn and Frostmorn. Now, we know that the Dreadlords basically funneled all this death magic into Argus, and that's what made Argus break the Arbiter. Now, what if Sargeras' blade was, in fact, some sort of Morn blade meant to steal Azeroth's soul? Nice theory. Didn't happen, though. So what's next? What are we actually dealing with? What have we got? To find out, we've actually got to hit up the fundamentals. So, what is that sword? Is it Gorabal? Here's the thing. Gorabal has never been in the game. That word has never been in the game, and I think that could be a significant thing. Gorabal, which is what it generally had been referred to, is only really found in the non-canon RPG from ages ago. Now in Antorus, we found Agrimar wielding Teshalak, right? And it was sundered in two. That's, I guess, one half of the RPG canon, but then Chronicle tells us this. Agrimar summoned all the power at his command and struck at Sargeras. Their blades met, igniting a furious explosion of fell and arcane power. When the torrent of warring energies finally subsided, Sargeras and Agrimar saw that both their weapons had been shattered. Right, so Sargeras' big famous sword was shattered. Well, think back to Sargeras stabbing the planet. I mean, did it look like an explosion of fell energy? In a way, you could say it almost looked a little bit more like Mythic Argus. And that's a funny thing, actually, because Mythic Argus, of course, was red. And whenever Argus' soul hit the Arbiter, and that's what actually deactivated the Arbiter, you can see that Sargeras' soul was red. Mogu Anima? That was also red. A lot of Revendreth Anima stuff, also red. And it does get us thinking a little bit. So, the sword that Sargeras stabbed Azeroth with is not confirmed to be Gorabal, and Gorabal, only being in the RPG, may not even exist. This means the sword that he used is not necessarily one derived from the sword, the famous one that he used while he was the champion of the Titans. Could Sargeras then have replaced his blade? Perhaps offered something by the Dreadlords? Well, the book Before the Storm actually gives this sword an origin, saying that it was crafted from hate made manifest. That doesn't really get us anywhere, does it? It's a bit non-specific, but it does suggest that it was crafted from hate, and that perhaps suggests that it is not the other half of the blade that he wielded, as he was a good guy. And that kind of frees up its origins. Now, we actually do know that there's a trinket named Legacy of Gorshalak that was in the game. And that pretty much does confirm that Sargeras once had that sword. If that's Gorshalak, there is no sign of Gorbal. So, was it destroyed by Agrimar, or is it in Silithus? We do not know. We don't know its name, we don't know its origin, and that means we absolutely do not know the full consequences of this blade for our planet, because the narrative room is open for it to have spooky properties. Of course, Shadowlands itself may have changed significantly in development, and that could be relevant here too. We still do have lots to dig into in this video, so let's get into that. Let's turn to Sargeras' only canon appearance in World of Warcraft, and his world-ending sword, no matter what it's called. Azeroth told Magni that Sargeras was about to strike. We ended up gathering in Argus, where Magni was given a vision by the planet's twisted world soul. In that vision, Sargeras commanded a corrupted Agrimar to secure Antorus' defense and to break the will of the captured Titan Pantheon. We of course then stormed the Burning Throne, and with its many beautiful vistas, saw Azeroth fat and blue in the sky. But there was a gathering darkness around Azeroth. And as we reached the peak to take on Argus himself, the darkness had erupted into a firestorm engulfing the planet, and of course we know that at its heart was Sargeras. With barely moments left to save her, we freed the Titans. They manifested in the seat of the Pantheon and drew Sargeras out from that storm with their combined power. Now, the thing here is we literally do not know what Sargeras was trying to do when he was in that cloud. All that we know is his reaction to getting caught. He was so close to achieving a plan that stretched back thousands of years, and it seemed that in that moment he decided that if he could not save her, no one could. So he summoned in this sword and buried it into Silithus, gravely wounding the world soul. Of course, the backbone of our fight against Sargeras, that was the class halls. So together, the class halls had 36 of the most powerful weapons in the Warcraft setting. These artifacts. And throughout our struggle, we had powered them up with the blessings of like Titan Keepers, wild gods, demons, more. We collected all this power, so we brought them to the wound at the peak of their power. And then the artifacts found their ultimate purpose. Magni told us that Azeroth had suffered a mortal wound, but worse than that, the dark energies of the sword were seeping into her blood, poisoning her. Now, does that tell us anything about the inherent properties of this sword? Perhaps, but it's vague, and I'm getting to why it's vague soon. Of course, we then raised our weapons up to the bleeding eye of the blade, and we drew out whatever that poison was. The sword was left a husk, dormant without the magic within. At least we think so. Azeroth was saved for now. But even to this day, that blade is still buried deep, meaning that Azeroth still is in danger. So the big question is, what is next? What is going to happen with this goddamn sword Even did it have cancelled plans in Shadowlands? It's all very confusing. We're all raising right questions, so let's do it. Okay, Magni and Khadgar were the characters that all of this lore wove around, right? Khadgar, he returned to Karazhan, he was sickened by the faction war, but he was searching for a permanent solution to Azeroth's wounds and all these problems. Now in patch 9.2.5, as we see in the PTR, we actually find out that Kirin Tor Raven that we speculated about a while ago in Orboz, that actually was Khadgar, just keeping an eye on things, learning. Now he tells Jaina that he had wanted to explore the Shadowlands before. What? Before Shadowlands the expansion happened? Maybe suggesting he had suspicions anyway? Because if he had suspicions about the Shadowlands before the Shadowlands expansion happened, does that not kind of suggest that Shadowlands-y stuff is connected to this blade and this whole Azeroth plot? Kinda would. Unfortunately, Khadgar doesn't tell us everything. So maybe that's a breadcrumb for later. Perhaps him and Magni will feature later on as we try to work out what's up with her and, well, I mean, try to save her, because now Azeroth has also taken a beating from Zovaal in the final fight of this expansion. But back to the sword. In Shadowlands, we of course discovered the First Ones. That's a conception, a thing we had no idea of in Legion. Now, if the Titan Pantheon of Order and the Eternal Pantheon of Death, if they work the same, then Gorshalakt itself was likely a First One's given weapon. You know? Like, in the same way that the Arbiter was supposed to serve a purpose for the Shadowlands, as a, defender of order, Sargeras' job was to have a very big, powerful weapon from the First Ones that would make sure things went down the way they were supposed to. So this weapon may be taken from Zereth Ordos, maybe made in Zereth Ordos. That's a place that, is kind of confirmed to exist. So it makes total sense that a sword so powerful is First One's tech. Now, if the thing that is stuck in Silithus is a shard of that blade, i.e. it is Gorabal, then that is descendant from the First One's originating sword that Sargeras wielded as the champion of the Titan Pantheon, which would mean that I suppose we would get additional First Onesy lore whenever we deal with this sword. Or it's simply the Dark Blade of Sargeras, something forged from pure hate itself, whatever that means. But then I think, could the Dreadlords be involved? Because obviously, and this is something that's actually in the Sylvanas novel, which you'll find out if you're on the Audible, it is actually that the jailer kind of prophesized a whole bunch of these things happening. Now, that suggests he kind of knows what the deal is with Sargeras. Now, you could, at a stretch, take the Winged Hilt and the Revendreth Red Energy, and the sword could almost make you think about Revendreth. And that would be relevant because Denathrius' Dreadlords were heavily involved in manipulating Sargeras from the very get-go. And of course, red, they turned Argus red. That redness of Argus signified death, magic, corruption, didn't it? I think the link there is potentially sensible, but I'll get on to why it may be something that they planned, but is maybe no longer something that's going to happen in the game in a little bit. Now, as for something a bit more straightforward that I think could happen, we've got to think, what happened last time Azeroth took a massive wound from a Titan? Well, that was when Aman'Thul ripped Y'Sharj out from the planet's crust, and that actually nearly killed Azeroth as well. It was a wound so terrible that the only solution to it was the Well of Eternity. And that well, funny enough, ended up being an almost direct avenue for Elune to interact with Azeroth, guiding the Kaldorei people from its waters. So could something like that be the end point of a sword removal plotline? I mean, if we think about this, it happened in Silithus. That's very close to Ahn'Qiraj. Ahn'Qiraj, that's an ancient Titan facility that's near the Chamber of the Heart. Gotta think about that. Okay, something for the Void now, because I wanted to throw it in for a bit of spice. One of the artifact weapons used to drain Sargeras' sword was Xal'atath. Now, Xal'atath herself escaped the blade and she disappeared into the cosmos. But that was only after Silithus. Now, it only takes a single seed of corruption for Void to grow and corrupt whole realms, so if a Return of Void is on the cards, it could actually be that the husk of this sword, that could be a part of it. I mean, hey, even for the blade itself, like, there's theories of it basically being a Horcrux for Azeroth, so who the hell knows what's going to go on there. But Blizzard can, really expand out that idea, and essentially anyone could use this sword as a lightning rod straight to the heart of our world soul. Hell, even my fan proposal for patch 9.2 had just that as a plot point. Now, with that in mind, we need to find a way to pull this sword out, to deal with it. I mean, Azeroth is dying, so will we go deeper? What lies underneath Azeroth? What's going on? Now, we've already talked about Khadgar and Magni, but what about Rathian? And this is where we could connect it to a Dragon Isles expansion, which is something that many of us think is likely. Well, Defense of the Earth is the Black Flight's charge, and that means that any resolution to a sword plotline actually would fit a Dragon Isles expansion quite naturally, and to be honest, I think that Khadgar and Rathian would probably have interesting interactions. So, either this sword is merely a remnant of a plot that is over, or it's something that's being used by another big force. And this is where I'm going to talk about the thing I've been teasing, because one of the most gigabrain Zovaal theories is that this sword is tied to death magic because of the Dreadlord infiltration that Sargeras was not aware of. And perhaps this was actually the plan originally, because it very much seems like the story of Shadowlands changed quite a bit. So there's been the obvious things, we've talked about the whole leaked original version of Zovaal and the Primus and the Rune Carver. Suffice to say, I had something leaked from a very, very reliable source that at the very least suggests that what we got was not originally the plan. Shadowlands evidently changed quite a bit during development, which is something that happens, but when that happens, it could play fast and loose with things that Blizzard thought, they were going to use in that expansion. They set up the sword, but then they changed their plot, now the sword doesn't really fit in the picture anymore. I think that may have happened. Because you see, Zovaal may not even have been the jailer at a point. It actually seems that the Primus may have been the jailer. It's all quite wild, and we'll probably do a full video on it. We've done stream segments, but you get the picture. Now, to be honest with you, if you want some of my personal opinion on this, I really wonder if this sword is essentially a bit of an abandoned plot point that Blizzard are now going to have to work into the future. Now, if you want the very simple answer to one of the questions, how does the sword fit into the Shadowlands? Well, it does fit into Shadowlands very simply. In the pre-fight cinematic, Zovaal says that Azeroth's weakened but brimming with potential. I think Azeroth's weakened state is because she got stabbed by a many kilometers long sword. The sort of sword that if physics existed in Warcraft would probably have caused, an extinction event multiple times over that would have ended all life on the planet, but hey, it's a fantasy universe, so that doesn't need to happen. But you get the point. Azeroth is weakened. That opens up the opportunity for Zovaal. To be honest with you, though, I think that Anduin was probably meant to be the end boss of 9.2, and I think there was probably some big storyline with the sword for 9.3, but that was cancelled. That's kind of what I think happened. Anyway, let's wrap it up. Whatever the next step for our planet is, I think a decent bit of it's going to be tied up with what we do to this sword. Because Azeroth has been through so much bullshit. I mean, she's been stabbed. The Emerald Dream, which is kind of close to her, has been infected with Void. Zovaal has just completely beaten her up through the Titan machinery in the Forge of Souls that connected to Torghast, that somehow connected to Zereth Mortis, I guess. Azeroth has been absolutely just railed for ages. She's been taking the hits. So we're going to have to make sure she's in okay health. And any part of that plotline has got to deal with this big sword. It's been 4 years. Perhaps it's going to be another year till we find out. Unless, of course, April's 10.0 reveal actually clues us in. But as I've mentioned today, we've got, we've got the obvious thing of Khadgar and Magni having a very big interest in making sure the planet's okay. We then have got the fact that Elune has been a bit more present in the lore lately, and that Elune and the Well of Eternity, had some things going on, and a massive wound in the planet is exactly what the Well of Eternity is, so whenever we deal with a sword, what could that mean for an Elune plotline? And then also, the sword is obviously buried deep within the earth, and that will, of course, very much connect with the fundamental charge of the Black Dragonflight, right, which Rathian is trying to rebuild, and that is to protect the Earth, which is obviously going to put Rathian, Khadgar, Magni, potentially even a bit of a Loon, in alignment. So there we go. That is as much as we could find about that sword and as much as we could work out about what could actually happen with the damn thing next. It's an interesting area with the lore where evidently Blizzard could do a hell of a lot with it. Now, if you'd like to support the channel and videos like this, checking out our sponsors is a great way to do that. And Boxu, today's sponsor, is a brilliant way to just get a whole bunch of new flavors to sample from Japan. It's a bunch of fun, and of course my discount link and code is down below in the description. So thanks to Boxu for supporting us, and thanks to you for watching. I'll see you next time.